So
I'm just curious when we're gonna get like more info on our actual, like what's required for our actual papers in case we want to like kind of get started on it.
let's do it now. All right, it is saved and published. So this is now actually on your, it's visible for you. So here we can just kind of read this here. You will write a research paper on a current topic. A number of you have already said, I've told you that looks great. I'm planning to go through and make sure I approve the rest of yours in the next day or two. There's one person who has not turned one in. I'm not sure why, but it's concerning. So if that's you, please do that. So your presentation and paper should be on a topic that interests you and can be written to inform us about the latest application of a scientific topic or exploring popular beliefs or supported by current scientific research. Right, it can't just be like a book report about something. It has to like bring in our current understanding about something. You must find your resources in scientific journals. You may use older references. In fact, sometimes older references are classics. There's stuff that was written, 50 years ago, even, that's still, like, again, some of the stuff I've been talking about, people first figured out quite a while ago. But you also want to make sure you have current references as well, because things do change, particularly in physiology. Right, and I said, although you may find it useful to utilize, secondary references, you should also have stuff from primary references. That's important. Paper should include an introductory section that clearly defines your topic and sets out the scope of your paper. This is important for you to figure out even as you're starting the assignment. So you stay focused in figuring out what papers are actually relevant for what I want to write. And, if one of the things you can get points for or lose points for is kind of lack of focus. If things don't feel cohesive, if it kind of feels like a bunch of random things all stuck in a shoebox that are loosely related, that's not as good as, a bunch of things that connect together to tell a complete story that you're trying to tell. So by kind of setting out your topic and your scope as you begin, then you're going to be in much better shape to not accidentally start becoming kind of more scattered. It should also have a concluding section that summarizes your main points. So, in the end, it's like, okay, here we've just gone on this journey together, and here's like these take-home messages. You also have the literature cited. I'm saying here minimum of 8, but it's a lower bound. A lot of times people use more. This is like, minimum. If you don't have that, you're going to be in trouble. Web content can be used to support your review, but you should not be a main reference. Layman websites, such as, are not, I mean, every once in a while, people will just find like Joe Smith on YouTube video on, health and eating. It's like, no. So only references that are actually, reputable.
So we can't quote Joe Rogan for this paper?
I guess if you're talking about if vaccines are safe, maybe, but.
Or serum.
No, oh my God. I had, so one of my old students who's now a nurse showed me a picture of something she had to sign off on. It was for a patient it was part of their papers were stop taking ivermectin. So I was thinking, oh my God, people are doing this. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. Let's see. Harvard referencing. So the referencing is the way we were doing it in this paper. Part of like the reason we were doing this paper and why I've just been spending this time talking to you about what works and what doesn't work is because this is going to be high intensity interval training paper on steroids. Again, reminder, do not quote exact wording of other articles unless absolutely necessary. Sometimes there is like, something that makes sense to quote. If you're like there's some classic thing that somebody said, or there's something that was, but most of the time not. Most of the time it doesn't make sense. It can be done individually or in pairs, as I mentioned. If you're working in pairs with your final submission, each pair of students that collaborates must create and submit a brief document that includes a record or statement of individual contributions to the overall project. So I want to make sure that both people were working, that it is a joint project and isn't just somebody that rode somebody else's coattails.
So should we like put what we contributed writing wise, like what our individual text contributions were, or just overall what we researched individually?
So if you look right below, it says, for example, and there's like an example.
All right, my eyes.
So like that. Helpful information, things that will make you lose points, not using scientific journal articles, using unreliable websites, cherry picking your references. This is something I didn't show, but this actually did come up in some of the papers I was looking at, where people did not actually have examples that really reflected the real range of things out there. Because there's a lot of contradictory stuff. And we'll talk about more about why that is in actually just a few moments. But usually the scientific literature does not agree with itself. There are different viewpoints. Or even if they do agree with themselves, it's not, not exactly. So you want to make sure that you don't just present one side without presenting the full range of what people are thinking. It's always tricky. That being said, sometimes there's an overall. You don't have to be like fair and balanced in that, like, oh, like one person is way out in left field who says such and such, and I need to include them. That you don't need to worry about that. But often there are people who do similar experiments and do them well and are still coming to different conclusions, because this method is a good way of getting at what's going on, but there's lots of randomness. So we'll talk more about that. This is different than like a debate, where you have to, or some rhetorical exercise where you have a point of view that you then have to support your point of view. That's not what this is. This is, you are supposed to be as much as possible, Walter Cronkite or something, like that's the way it is out there in the world and what people are currently thinking about this topic. As much as possible, kind of keep biases out of there. Or if you have biases, everybody has biases, have your biases be clear that, it's in this greater context. So this is the rubric, which you will need to pay attention to. You kind of zoom it. So these are the things that I'm going to use when I'm kind of grading. So things to, again, when you're coming up with the paper, when you're writing the paper, knowing like what kind of things am I going to looking for? Integration of knowledge. The paper demonstrates the author, that's you, fully understands the topic and the concepts are integrated into the writer's own insights. The writer provides concluding remarks that shows analyses and synthesis of ideas. So you are going out there and finding what's out there, but then you're also kind of putting it all together to tell the story. Um, the opposite of that would be like that paper I showed that was just like a separate summary of 4 different studies with no kind of wrapping up or no pulling it together. Right? That's why we do this initial homework, is so you can see like, oh, that's not what it is, right? Because that one is designed to kind of bring this stuff out. So now that we've seen that, we can make sure as we go into the main assignment, that you've got a better sense of what it means to integrate. Topic focus. The topic is focused narrowly enough for the scope of the assignment. Thesis statement provides direction for the paper, either by statement or position or hypothesis. So it's easy to get to bite off more than you can chew and start writing a paper that's just, again, lots of loosely related tidbits rather than pulling together to tell an interesting story. So, that's something you might find as you get started, that you have to narrow in your focus, because that you might find that some of this is a bit of an iterative process. Depth of discussion, again, going into enough depth that you're not being superficial about what you're interested in or about what the papers say. Cohesiveness, just ties things together. Obviously makes sense. That's kind of related to integration, but it also just makes sure things don't feel fragmented. Like, if it's always weird if you're going from one paragraph to the next paragraph and there's no reason at all that you understand, like, why did this person just end up here? How did this relate to what just came before? This is just, cohesiveness is the different parts feel like they belong in the same paper and should be strung together. Paper flows, again, like the B level, paper flows with only some disjointedness. Author demonstrates an understanding of the relationship among the material obtained from the different sources, right? So things are related and they flow. Spelling and grammar, like I said, you are going to get dinged if your spelling and grammar is off, because the whole point here is to communicate. And also, it's sometimes I don't know even what do you mean? It's hard for me to grade if I don't know what you're actually. Maybe they know what they're saying and they just don't know how to say it, or maybe they don't know what they're saying. I don't know. So if spelling and grammar is not everybody's strength, I know that, but there are resources out there. There's the online writing workshop and the libraries and your friends and family who will proofread things for you. So it is on you, though, not to turn something in that hasn't been like proofread if you're not comfortable with your own kind of writing skills, because that is part of the grading. Sources. So just making sure that you use enough sources and use good sources. And then citations is kind of how the sources are integrated into your paper, that you're using them properly, you're supporting your points in appropriate ways. So hopefully, so Liz, does this pretty clear?
Yeah, so do we not have like a certain page count we have to hit?
Oh, it's not a page count, but for something of this scope,
I mean, obviously it's going to be a decent
I'd
length.
say usually they're, including references, are usually at least 10 pages or something like that. I mean, if your main paper was only 2 pages long, that would not be enough. If your main paper was getting more than 10 pages, you're probably overdoing it. So I don't want to say exactly how many, because it's going to depend on your topic. It's going to depend on your spacing and your fonts and your margins and whatever.
Are there requirements for that? Sorry, I've just taken a lot of writing classes, so I'm just like curious if it's,
You know,
as long as we hit our sources and do all the, it sounds like if as long as we hit the sources, we do all the citing correctly, we do kind of like the flow correctly, that's sort of like the most important.
right, and you know, the depth part, like, you know, so the depth is that you are actually, yeah. Yeah, it's, I think I don't want to give like an actual page count because then people are going to write to the page count. It's just, which makes it
Right.
weird.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Yeah. All right, so that is the main part of it. There's one other part to this assignment as well, which is the research project PowerPoint presentation. So you are going to be making a 10-slide PowerPoint presentation. It's 10 slide, should say 10-minute PowerPoint presentation. You know, that summarizes your findings, you know, so that other students will be able to view and comment on. So that's going to be part of your grade, is actually going and commenting on other people's research projects. So I'll be uploading these all into Canvas, and everybody will be having, there'll be a discussion board where people can discuss other people's research projects. And depending on how much time we have, at least a number of people will be presenting theirs to the class as well. So this has to be set up as a, you know, kind of your paper in a nutshell, basically. It's like just a summary of your thing. This is also going to be due the same day, so I need to change the date on this.
Is this like a slide PowerPoint?
Yeah.
I just got confused because by the 10-minute I was.
No, I mean, so a presentation that lasts for 10 minutes, if you're going to be talking to the rest of the class.
Oh, if we were talking while we were showing the PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah, so.
Can we use images or no?
Yeah, you should.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably going to have graphs. You're probably, you know, if you're going to, oh, I'm going to save and publish. Oh, wait, let's get rid of this. Yeah, so a 10-minute PowerPoint presentation. So the presentation, meaning you're gonna be in Zoom. I'll let you share your screen, and you're gonna talk to us, and you'll use your PowerPoint slides, you know, to introduce what you're looking at, to show the core information, you know, support it with different papers. Like, you know, if you're talking some main results, like, you know, oh, that's from, you know, Smithson 2022 or whatever. No, it'll be 2021 because, well, not quite. But so maybe I should, I mean, I want to make, so create a PowerPoint presentation. I'm trying to think about how to do this so people aren't confused. So take 10 minutes to present. Is that clearer?
Yeah, that's better. Thank you.
And, you know, I can say like, you know, how about maybe 10 slides more or less? You know, so the 10-10 works on both of those. You know, it should, yeah, it could be more or less slides. Don't make it longer than 10 minutes to present, because otherwise we're going to run out of time. That is a hard, you know, this is a hard limit. So. The PowerPoint presentation should be pretty easy to come up with. once you are done with your paper, because it's just basically your paper in a nutshell. Let me see if I can, hold on. Remote learning, whoops. Here, like here's somebody review of omega-3 fatty acids and anxiety, you know, and she did like, they're in fish and she did a cool, and then like the different, so it's nice. You can use pictures, make it pretty. Why not make it pretty? If other people have to watch it, you might as well make it pretty for them. And she kind of goes through kind of introduction, she talks about and she supports what her, where she got some of the main information, there's, uses graphics to make it easier, blah, blah, so, this is the kind of thing, it can be like this. This is if you are doing like, she's obviously, got skills in doing, making a pretty looking one. This one also, uses some of this stuff. I'm trying to look at some of these other ones. This one, yeah. I mean, in general, it's kind of fun to actually make things pretty, right? This one is mostly kind of just words, but then she puts a few of those in, does some cool little graphics, so you are not graded though. You're not going to be graded on aesthetics. You'll be graded on content for this one. So I know like when I'm doing things, it just makes it more fun if you make it into an art project as well as an assignment. But it's up to you. So hopefully does that give you a sense of what those little PowerPoint things look like?
Yes, thank you.
All right.
I have a question about that.
Uh-huh.
So we prepare the PowerPoint file, and then do we actually like record via Zoom or whatever a voiceover of ourselves presenting it and then send it to you by that date?
No, you're going to actually present it in class in our live lab.
Okay.
And you will also send me your PowerPoint, which I will upload just as a visual presentation for people to comment on. So, it's so they can kind of click through it and remember what you had to say.
Okay.